Bonjour à toutes et à tous. C'est un grand plaisir de vous accueillir à notre premier événement CIFAR Talks de cette année. Je m'appelle Elissa Strome et j'ai le plaisir et le privilège de diriger la stratégie pan-canadienne en matière d'IA du CIFAR. Hello and good afternoon. My name is Elissa Strome, and I'm the Executive Director of the Pan-Canadian AI Strategy at CIFAR, and I'm really delighted to welcome you all here today. I'd like to start by acknowledging the land on which CIFAR operates here in Toronto, which has been the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples for thousands of years. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and it is still home today to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We are incredibly grateful to have the opportunity to live, work, learn, and share on this land. And likewise, I encourage all of you to reflect on the history of the land that you are situated on and to learn more about the steps we can all take towards reconciliation. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping items to share. Today's session will be 1 hour and there will be Q&A. So if you have a question, please submit it through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to address it. Today's talk is also available in French. You can select the globe interpretation icon at the bottom of your screen and select French to hear simultaneous interpretation. This session is also being recorded and will be available on our website, cifar.ca, shortly. As you may know, CIFAR is a global research organization proudly based in Canada. We convene extraordinary researchers across disciplines and career stages to address the most important questions facing science and humanity. We are supported by the governments of Canada, Alberta, and Quebec, as well as Canadian and international foundations, individuals, corporations, and partner organizations. CIFAR also leads the Pan-Canadian AI strategy in partnership with the Government of Canada and our 3 national AI institutes, AMI in Edmonton, Mila in Montreal, and the Vector Institute in Toronto. Recently, the Government of Canada announced the creation of the Canadian AI Safety Institute, or CAISI for short. CAISI will be led by Innovation Science and Economic Development Canada. As a component of the new institute, CIFAR was tasked with leading a dedicated research program to advance understanding of the risks associated with AI technologies and our capacity to detect and mitigate them. Deepfakes, misinformation, privacy, security, bias, and discrimination. These are just a few of the examples of the potential harms that many nations around the world, including Canada, are concerned about as AI becomes increasingly a part of our everyday lives. We know AI safety is top of mind for Canadians as well. As many as 70% of Canadians fear that the use of AI in the long term will pose a dangerous threat. And this will be the focus of our conversation today. And now I'm delighted to introduce the 2 co-directors of the CAISI research program at CIFAR. Nicolas Papernot is a Canada CIFAR AI chair at the Vector Institute and assistant professor in the departments of electrical and computer engineering, computer science, and the Faculty of Law at the University of Toronto, and a faculty affiliate at the Schwartz-Reisman Institute for Technology and Society. His research focuses on the privacy and security of machine learning systems. Catherine Régis is a Canada CIFAR AI chair at Mila, a professor in the Faculty of Law at the University of Montreal, and the director of the Social Innovation and International Policy Group at Ivadu. Her research focuses on global AI governance, AI regulation in healthcare, and human rights approaches to AI. And we are delighted that Murad Hemmadi, AI correspondent at The Logic, has joined us as our moderator for today. So welcome, everyone, and over to you, Murad.
Thanks so much, Elissa. So as Elissa said, we're taking Q&A, so just one housekeeping note before I dive in here, which is please use the Q&A feature to ask questions. Please ask them throughout the talk. We won't wait till the end to do Q&A Q&A. My apologies. We'll work it in as we go. So, you snooze, you lose. Also, try and keep your questions short and to the point, please. The whole point of this is there's going to be lots of places to talk about your research going forward. So for now, please give our panelists things they can actually respond to. Okay, let's get rolling here. Nicolas, Catherine, firstly, congratulations on these new roles and setting up this program. I want to start with the basics so our audience has an understanding of kind of what we're talking about here. So let's start kind of zoomed out with the big picture. Nicolas, what's the big picture goal of the CAISI research program at CIFAR?
Right. So as Elissa mentioned, the research program is one of the components of the newly established Canadian AI Safety Institute. And it is really important to think about it as part of sort of the Pan-Canadian AI strategy, which already had sort of as one of its goals to advance socially responsible AI. And so what our aim here is really to foster greater trust from Canadians in AI systems, and to also increase the education and the confidence of Canadians in the responsible use of AI. And this really is sort of establishes sort of two main goals. When it comes to maintaining trust of the public in the AI technology, we have to understand there are many applications of AI, and in many cases, they can help individuals or organizations to be more effective, right? So we've all started using AI to draft emails. We know AI can be used to make healthcare systems more efficient. These are two examples. But at the same time, we want to make sure we can enjoy these potential benefits while managing the risks. And so that is a big key objective for CAISI, is to identify these risks and evaluate methods for mitigating them. And one important thing to note here is that the decisions that we make now as a society, and how we inform the work the government is doing, is really going to help us navigate this uncertainty around how the AI technology will evolve. So that's trust. And then education is a second component. I think we'll go into more details later in the conversation, but essentially at a high level, we want to make sure we promote AI literacy, that we help sort of ensuring the public has an appropriate perception of the technology and its potential impact, and that we also understand what are Canadians' expectations for the technology so that we can ensure that it meets these expectations.
Yeah, and to your point about usage, I note from our attendee list that some people have sent their AI note takers but are not here themselves, although we've got so lots of people are using the technology. Catherine, how do you see the role of this program in sort of what's happening around AI safety?
So first of all, hi, everyone. So if I were to summarize, what we want to achieve here is really to build a high caliber research program and a research community around AI safety in Canada. And we want to do this by working with obviously established researchers in the field, but also emerging ones, including building a student community that will eventually take the lead as well. And I think more broadly, it's kind of the latest chapter, the latest commitment of Canadian towards the development of a strong AI research community. So we've been very good at doing that. We want to push further in that research agenda, I would say. But also it's part of our commitment towards responsible AI, which is the signature of the Canadian AI ecosystem, not only nationally, but also at an international level. And how it's going to work, perhaps more on a practical level somehow, is to first guide our research priorities. That's what we are going to do, Nicolas, myself, and Elissa, and the Research Council for CAISI. So guide the research priority and our efforts for AI safety research. And also we're going to do that by launching grant proposals. We have one already up now, a Catalyst grant. I think we're going to speak about that a bit later on. But also we want to do that by staying connected with the research community in Canada. So we don't want to be disconnected. We really want to take the pace and hear what the research community in Canada has to say about AI safety and adapt along the way. And The big picture goal also, I would say, is to really help to develop AI that is beneficial for people and society. That's the key focus of what we want to do here. And also eventually to guide policymakers through our research so they can focus on what is very important in AI safety and to achieve this beneficial adoption of AI. And also, not only we want to really be strong in Canada in that research agenda, we want to contribute to the global effort as well on AI safety. So what we do here, we hope is going to help the global research community and global policymakers as well in doing better.
Yeah, and I think this gets to let's just clarify right off the top here, because Godwin has this question. I think it's a good one. Will CAISI have any regulatory authority? And maybe you folks can make the distinction between what you're doing and what the CAISI is a bigger institution. Just scope that out for us. What is this research program compared to that?
So we are really focused on the research program. So it's that's important distinction. So we're going to do public research and really help the research community. But CAISI itself is going to be part of ICED, and they are the one dealing with other, and I would say, international relationship with the other AI safety institutes, for instance, but also decide about policy options and so on. So that's not our role for sure. We are focused on building the strong research community and helping hopefully the Canadian government and CAISI in building on that research to eventually propose policy options. But these are kind of different things for sure.
Right. You figure out what the subject matter is and you leave the actual regulation.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's talk about the subject matter. I know it's still early days for the program, of course, and we'll talk a little bit about how you want to get everybody engaged in bringing their ideas forward. But just to start out with, let's set the table a little bit. Nicolas, what are some of the specific topics that you're hoping researchers will bring in projects on?
Yeah, so our approach in sort of selecting the topics that we want to prioritize in the first few months of the research program is really based on the International Scientific Report on the State of Advanced AI. This is a very rigorous sort of international cooperative effort to survey the field. It was led by Canadian Yoshua Bencho. So we're taking its approach in sort of identifying both harms that are already established when it comes to studying general purpose AI, and also looking at the evidence of additional risk that is gradually emerging. And so to start off, say, looking ahead at 2025, our program will initially focus on sort of these already established issues, and I can give you a couple of examples.
Please do.
One is synthetic content. So it comes into two flavors when we're looking at general purpose AI. The first one is the outputs that these AI systems make, which lead to a number of issues around, for instance, misinformation, as these models are increasingly more capable of generating very realistic, although fake, content. And so things like deepfakes really raise a number of not only technical questions as to how you can distinguish it from sort of quote unquote real content, but also socio-technical questions, because of course what is real is something that we have to define as a society. This type of content can also sort of what the model's output be used to create scams or generate malicious software and so on. That's something we want to tackle. Something I'd like to point out as well is that because these AI systems are now generating content that they then in the future are going to train on, there are a number of concerns around the fact that the training of these AI systems is now done on data that is partially synthetic. And so this creates a number of new research questions. One of them that we've been looking at, for instance, is something known as model collapse, where if you train on something that is synthetic and then repeat this process many, many times, you're achieving the equivalent of sort of putting a piece of paper through a photocopier and then putting the photocopy through the photocopier, eventually you lose all the information. And that's something we want to understand, sort of what is the impact of that data on these AI systems. And Canada is actually chairing an international collaboration with other AI safety institutes on the question of synthetic content. Another example I'll mention briefly is privacy. This is particularly interesting in Canada because we have this unique healthcare ecosystem through the single-payer system, as well as this very strong academic expertise in healthcare. And obviously there, the data is extremely sensitive. And there is already evidence that existing privacy-enhancing technologies are not appropriate to general-purpose AI systems. And so there's a lot of work that needs to happen, for instance, to understand how we can give individuals control of their data, which we'll look at with the research program. And then more broadly, just to end this answer, I think we're going to be looking at a lot of methods towards training more trustworthy models. This comes in, there's a number of steps towards achieving that. We need to understand sort of what it means for humans to trust an AI system and derive properties that we want these AI systems to have. Based on this more precise understanding, this could come in the form of robustness, interpretability, lack of bias in the predictions, etc. And then we want to fund research that will allow us to attest that these AI systems have these properties. And there we're looking at things like cryptography or best practices for human monitoring of these AI systems. And I'm happy to go into more details, but I don't want to.
Yeah, we've really set the frame here, I think, really well. So Catherine, I wanted to ask you, so you come to this, you're a lawyer by background, and one of the fascinating things about this world and covering it is the number of people coming from kind of different places to these questions of AI. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the sort of interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary parts of this. Are you only looking to hear from computer scientists?
No, we are interested for sure what they have to say in their contribution, but this is really a multidisciplinary effort. And just looking at who are the co-chair of this research program, Nicolas and myself, you see that there's a strong commitment from CIFAR and from CAISI more broadly in making sure that we make this a reality. So interdisciplinarity is important actually for the Canadian research community. And this is what Elissa mentioned, but when she was traveling around and really trying to take the pace and the feeling of the Canadian research community across Canada, one point that came strongly is the importance for them of having this multidisciplinary perspective in the research that we do in AI and in AI safety as well. So this is going to be very important in the program that we're going to lead and something we want to focus on, and that's something that represents the strong interest and desire of the research community. And it's important for so many reasons, also mainly because many of the risks and opportunities related to AI require that multidisciplinary analysis and solution approach to fully understand first the problems, but also to propose appropriate actions, to have that 360-degree perspective of problems, but also solution. And I'm just going to give you an example with disinformation. So disinformation, again, as was mentioned by Nicolas, is something that obviously it's been existing for a long time, disinformation, but it's kind of supercharged by AI. And again, if you read the news recently, was one of the result of the Canadian Commission on Foreign Interference. It was mentioned that AI could really lead to further disinformation. So that's something that is important for the community, and it's been existing for a long time. So we know there's technical solution that can help with disinformation. So techniques that can help to identify AI-produced content, for instance, but it also requires to understand how disinformation spread, how people react to it, and what kind of policy eventually can curb the disinformation, I would say, problem. So it really is, I think, a good example, but there are many others about how we need to bring all these different perspectives to a full understanding of the issue, but also to propose solutions that will have a concrete impact.
Yeah, and so I want to stay with you, Catherine, to talk about the impact side of this because all these projects will happen, and we'll talk more about projects and issues in focus in a second. But we've had some questions here already about outreach, assistance, education. What happens at the end of the projects? Like, do the researchers all go away and go on with their lives? What are the actual outputs of the program as far as the public and policymakers are concerned?
Well, no, we certainly not hope that people are just going to stay with the result and forget about dissemination. Dissemination is something that is really important for the research community and certainly for the research program more broadly. And Nicolas emphasized the role of education. It's kind of at the heart of what we want to do here. So in our research program and the different grants that we are going to launch and the one that we already did with the Catalyst grant, there's a strong focus on impact. So we want to make sure that what we do here is going to have an impact and really help Canadians and more broadly citizens and societies on making sure that we really can limit the negative impact of AI and the risk, but also benefit from this technology. So focusing on impact necessarily implies that we have a strong strategy of not only the researcher who applied to these grants and receive these grants, but to really achieve these goals. So this dissemination strategy is going to be embedded in the research propositions that we are going to receive, and we are going to support that in many aspects. Also, with the research program, it's still new, but that's something that we have already started to discuss at the Research Council, is that we are trying to find a way to support this effort even more firmly, not only at a national level, to make sure that the research that results from this research program really have not only the impact, as I mentioned, but the visibility and the reach out, the educational part that is there, but also we are going to make sure that what we produce here at the national level also have an impact at the global level. We feel that it's our contribution to this global effort, is our strong, our robust research community in AI. What we are going to produce, our effort at the international level is to really bring that to that space as well. So we are going to try to bridge the two. And as I mentioned a bit earlier, also the research work that we are going to do, we hope it's going to help our policymaker then to take to help them in their effort to better govern and use this technology. So we are hoping that it's going to bridge the two, I would say, actors, the research communities, but also policymakers in achieving the hopeful impact and frame this technology.
Yeah, Nicolas, I want to hear from you as well on the dissemination piece and the impact piece, but I also want to tack on a thing here because Catherine mentioned bridge the two sides. There's a third side here, a third side of two maybe. Kenny Way has this question: would there be any focus for CAISI to take the research into industry use and commercialization, or focusing only on research and policy making? Which I think is an interesting question from a CIFAR perspective as well, given the sort of roots in early AI research that's now being commercialized. So how do you see the interaction with industry?
Yeah, so just to add on to what Catherine was discussing, I think there are I completely agree, and there are some mechanisms we can build on. For instance, CIFAR has a program to help put together policy briefs, and that's something we hope to share with researchers funded through the research program to help them sort of take their research to have an impact. Another contribution beyond sort of the material, sort of the papers themselves, the research papers, is of course the talent that is going to be trained through the research program, and that's going to be extremely important, and it's going to flow back to the Canadian economy, but also to the government, and give it the resources to work on this question. Coming back to the question you just asked on industry, I think if you look at, again, the broader picture, the CAISI is building on the strength of the Pan-Canadian AI strategy and in particular, the three national AI institutes so these three institutes have teams that are dedicated to engaging with the industry. And I think we're going to be able to build on on that existing expertise to make sure that both the research results translate to industry, but also the research questions and priorities that we select are sort of relevant to what is happening in the industry.
Right. Yeah, and then thank you all so much for your questions. I can see them rolling in. We're definitely not going to hit all of them, but CIFAR folks are also paying attention. This engagement is fantastic, so please keep it up. I want to ask about one type of research or one sort of area of AI safety that I think, it's kind of the elephant in the room. It's the thing that has gotten a lot of attention, and I will take that on as a person in the media. Certainly, it's gotten a lot of media attention in the last, I don't know, call it 2.5 years. So each of you is part of a major Canadian AI research institute among the many, many jobs you both hold concurrently. The scientific directors of those institutes, Jeffrey Hinton and Joshua Bengio, have made a lot of noise with their views that AI could pose an existential risk to humanity, and that it's something that needs to be studied. They have said a lot of other things about AI. I just want to be clear. They've talked about benefits, but this is the one that tends to get the headlines. And so I just wanted to ask, will research on existential risk be part of this program? Will it be a major part of this program?
I can start, and Catherine, if you want to add onto it. I will say we're, of course, very well aware of the discussion around sort of existential risk. And it is one important point. Right now, we are more focused on immediate risk. If you look at the first two call for proposals that we're putting out, we're focusing on established concerns. And I will say, though, that existential risk is something we are discussing within the Research Council, looking forward to sort of the next years of CAISI's research program. Catherine, do you want to add something?
No, I think it's exactly where we are right now. So it's not our priority for right now, but it's not excluded for sure. And the research community can always send a research proposal in our when we launch some grants that comes from what they think is important for the community. So it's always open for that kind of research as well, but it's not our priority, I would say, for right now.
And there we have it. We've answered Josh's question here. And I think maybe check up doors. So we're knocking these down, and you keep them coming. So I do want to zoom out a little bit and ask about the broader context, because we've got quite a lot of questions here about the international context. And Catherine, you've already talked a little bit about wanting to inform not just, Canadian policy, but the international conversation around this. So you are not yourselves the Canadian AI Safety Institute, and I'm not asking you to speak for them, obviously, but a lot of countries now do have ACs. They've set them up. They were kind of like the hottest accessory of fall 2023. It was like everyone needed an AC. And so I want to understand how this fits into that broader context. So maybe let's start with you, Nicolas. How is your research program different from what's going on at the other ACs right now?
Yeah, so first, to place things into context, so you're absolutely right. There is now an international network of AI safety institutes. As you mentioned, since November 2023, there has been a number of announcements. And I think what's clear at this point is we're all working together to develop a shared agenda for research. You can anticipate things like collaborative grants sort of further down the road. Coming back to your question about the specificity of Canada, I think Canada has a history of advancing responsible development of AIs. I'm thinking about things like the Montreal Declaration of Responsible AI. CIFAR has itself previously funded solution networks that advance responsible AI. I've been reading the report from the Public Awareness Working Group in Canada that has really interesting findings around how the public is perceiving AI and how to educate the public around AI. And one thing I think that comes from all this work is initially a focus on sort of risk mitigation efforts, which aren't being addressed as much by other international AI safety institutes. So things like societal challenges and solutions for risk mitigation, Again, coming back to what we mentioned earlier on trust, disinformation, public understanding of AI, there is still a very little understanding, even among developers, of how general purpose AI models operate. And so we need to advance that, but also fill the information gap that you alluded to between sort of developers, maybe in industry, and other stakeholders like regulators. And one way to fill this information gap is, of course, to increase the expertise pool, so that regulators have more access to the relevant expertise. We also want to look into more innovative approaches to governance, to, again, foster these risk mitigation strategies and think more broadly about the economic and the regulatory environment. And I'll let Catherine add anything if I haven't covered all of it.
Sure. So just to add a few points. So there's, as you mentioned, Murad, there's kind of the national level here, but the international level as well. And there are different national AI safety institutes in countries around the world, not everywhere, but still there's an increasing pool of such institute, and they all have their own signature, right? An emphasis. Some are more focused on research, some on standards and policy, and it kind of varies. And so that was one of the first exercise. We're not CAISI, but a research program was to kind of find our own signature. What we want to is specific to Canada, and I think Nicolas mentioned that very clearly. And so we want to build on our strengths, but we also want to contribute for the international level, building on these strengths. And in addition to what has been mentioned, I think what is important for us with this research program, and I think, but I'm not them, for CAISI more broadly, is to really, again, emphasize that research component, but that interdisciplinarity or multidisciplinarity, and that technical and social technical approaches that we see that are important to bring together. I would say that that's a strong component that we want to do with the research program, certainly, and that's certainly something we are that is important for the Canadian component. But also what is happening at the international level, and again, that was mentioned, and there is kind of a network of all these institutes that want to try to coordinate to a certain level what they are doing and share their expertise. So that network of national AI safety institute include countries such as the UK, US, France, and Japan. And then when they all meet, and again, it's still new, but there is a strong commitment of making sure that we don't duplicate what we do, but we really share our strength and also the result of our efforts, our research, and then we scale up what we do to have the biggest impact. So there is this conversation, dialogue, and desire to bring things together also at the international level. So it's the two that makes the whole project especially impactful, I would say.
All right, Canada is a piece of a broader
Yeah.
movement that's happening. So I want to ask a sort of different question about the broader context, which is, we've referred to sort of where all these AI safety institutes come from, and it does feel like over the course of since November 2023, there's been a bit of a shift in the global conversation about AI, or maybe the global policy conversation about AI at the level of sort of policymakers and governments. This is what I spend a lot of my time doing. Just as an example of this, there's a big AI summit in Paris next week, the AI Action Summit. We were talking earlier, just before this call started, about what's going on there. This one seems to be much more focused on sort of innovation and adoption of AI than the AI Safety Summit a year and a half ago at Bletchley Park, which had safety in the name and was sort of coming out of that conversation. Catherine, has the global conversation moved away from AI safety? And what impact will that have on sort of the impact or support for the program's work?
That's a very interesting question. And honestly, I'm not sure we can talk about a full shift from safety to adoption. And I'm saying that because of what we've been mentioning, that international network of AI safety institutes, and also the International AI Safety Report that just has been launched, and so on. But I agree that there's an increasing, I would say, emphasis on adoption, as we have seen from various governments recently, but also, as you mentioned, the focus of the next AI summit in Paris. And honestly, adoption, I would say, is certainly an important element to consider. So governments, businesses, and other actors are looking for solutions to solve important problems with respect on so many issues and opportunities, such as efficiency, human resources, economic growth, environment, and so on. And AI can certainly contribute to that. So adoption is a key component of any, I would say, responsible AI strategy. But I think safety and adoption should in fact coexist. And the real problem would be to see the two of them in opposition. So there are different reasons for that. The first one is no adoption. There will be no adoption if people don't think that AI is safe to use. And I do a lot of work in healthcare, and that's pretty obvious in that field. Like the resistance of using something that you're not sure is safe really slow adoption processes. So it's important to link the two together. And also another element is that there will be a major, I think, adoption step back if important safety issues happen. So if we think that by not addressing safety issue, we will be good on track with adoption, I think it's a mistake, because if something wrong and we don't anticipate and act before it happens, that's going to be a problem for adoption. And I would say perhaps the third element is that if what we want is the adoption of safe AI, so AI that is not dangerous for people and have an impact on it is very beneficial and don't impact negatively people on their health, human rights, and their life. We need to make sure that this is the kind of adoption we promote, because this is where we're going to see the real benefit for people and societies. So we want to aim for safe AI adoption. So for me, they are really closely linked, and I really hope we don't see them in opposition.
Yeah, there's an interesting to your second point about sort of something going wrong and that impacting adoption. There's an interesting parallel with the nuclear industry, and
Yeah.
I won't bore everyone, but everyone should just Google precautionary principle nuclear and sort of AI. I think there's interesting work happening about thinking about the parallels there. But Nicolas, how do you think about this question of sort of the environment in which you're undertaking this research and how it's approaching sort of AI's risks and benefits?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Catherine. I think another way you can say what she said is safety in some sense is not an end goal. It's really safety is a prerequisite to being able to adopt AI and to sustain sort of innovation that it enables. I would say there is also a lot of work that needs to happen in terms of consolidating information, structuring the community, working on these issues, and ensuring that this engagement that is happening with the public is effective and impactful. And I think that's why we're seeing these broader and broader topics brought up in these international summits, because that conversation is still sort of taking shape itself.
I wanna knock off a couple quick questions here about the actual programming before we move to the next thing, because I think you're here. We might as well do this. So one question, one quite specific question, but I think might be useful to people here. My apologies. It's so many. I'm scrolling through. So Patrick asked, the Catalyst grants seem like an amazing initiative. However, I see they are only open to researchers affiliated with national AI institutes. Are there plans to provide grants to Canadian AI safety researchers more broadly?
Okay, I can maybe begin answering. I think the first call is, as we mentioned a few times, we're building on the strengths we have in the National AI Institutes. And the first call was launched quite quickly after after CAISI was established, and so there's sort of a necessity to involve the AI institutes to be able to execute quickly. So we do take that feedback, and we're looking to engage the entire Canadian community beyond the institutes themselves.
I want to add to this that for the Catalyst grant, it's mentioned that at least one PI must be affiliated with an AI institute, but it means that other researchers can join as well. So, and there's more information on CIFAR website on this, but as also Nicolas mentioned, that's something that we keep in mind. We want to include the full research community, but yeah.
To go out and form your teams. And so, another question, sort of about who's going to be involved, I think is an interesting one from Kai. Would there be attention looking at non-G7 countries and non-traditional partners or actors, sort of from a Canadian perspective, in Africa or China? But let's broaden it out to, non-G7 countries or non-sort of advanced economies generally.
Well, it's not focused on G7 countries, and it's just about finding the best research as possible. And if the partners that you have for your researchers are in any places in the world, that's fine as well. I mean, it's not a G7 focus program.
Fantastic. Okay, so I want to ask a little bit about the industry side of this and how it relates to what you're doing. To go back to that topic, just to say, you're not doing this work in a vacuum. Technology companies are making regular breakthroughs in the capabilities of general purpose systems. And I realize we've used that term quite a bit for sort of folks who are not from this world. Broadly speaking, what we're talking about is the kinds of models that power the generative tools that you've come to use on the internet, ChatGPT or the email prompts in Gmail. That's broadly speaking, I'm simplifying a lot what we mean by general purpose systems here. I think not messing anything up here, folks. You both of you actually do the technical work. So that's the context. We see these advances. It just certainly keeps me busy. Every new model that comes out has some new feature or capability. Nicolas, do researchers need to be able to see things like the model weights or the training data from these advanced general purpose models like O1 or R1 or whatever, whichever example we want to use, to be able to do effective safety research? Do they need that access to be able to do this work?
I would say that we can do different research with and without access to the models weights and the training data. Both are sort of important distinctions. You can do some research only if you have access to both the weights and the training data, and some research is possible even with just access to the weights. I would say that we're in general looking for the work that is done as part of the research program to be open and to be open science in general. There are advantages and disadvantages to sort of open source. The advantages are clearly sort of in terms of increased transparency, as you're alluding to with the question. It allows for external scrutiny, and the disadvantages are sort of still being worked out and understood as these models are being released, and we understand sort of the necessity for controlling sort of their use cases, and as the regulation is also being developed. I think in terms of providing resources to the research community to make this work possible, I do want to point out to the necessity to continue funding sort of equipment that will support this research. So the government of Canada announced about a year ago now $2 billion funding for equipment, which is really just keeping us afloat, essentially, and making sure that sort of academics have just enough compute to make that research possible. And one thing that we can do as a research program overall is to fund work that will help decrease the need for resources outside industry to audit sort of the behavior of these AI systems. So I mentioned very briefly cryptography earlier on in one of the questions. That is an example of technology that we can use to place sort of the computational cost of attesting that a system has a specific property onto the model developer rather than the entity that is regulating that system. And so we do want to see more of these innovative ideas to allow for more public and external scrutiny on these industry systems without necessarily placing the cost of this auditing onto the public and the society.
I'll be fascinated to hear about that. Catherine, maybe can I ask you a different version of this question, which is this program, the CAISI research program at CIFAR was set up with about $27 million in federal funding from the money that was sort of appropriated for CAISI. That will pay for a lot of projects, right? Like the way that you've got it set up, that will fund a lot of research. But technology companies are spending hundreds of millions of dollars or even billions of dollars per generation of model at this point. We'll see what happens post DeepSeek in terms of training efficiency, but like right now, we're talking that's orders of magnitude. So I have more of a philosophical question, really, which is, can safety research have any impact given that resource mismatch?
Well, it's certainly a challenge, and I don't think there's any easy solution to that. But I think it's essential to keep our effort for sure in the public sector, and it's exactly what this research program is trying to do. And we need to invest in public research, but independent research. Otherwise, the gap will continue to increase, right, between the two. It's already kind of something that we need to be aware of, and that can be of concern. And again, that's the purpose of this program. And this is also why I think we need to invest our effort, our strength in that program, but also make sure that we scale up our effort and coordinate at the global scale. So we really have that broader impact to kind of counterbalance that reality. And the International AI Safety Report that we've been mentioning for a few times during this conversation, I think illustrates this point. So there's an immense value, as we have seen with this report, in having researchers from various countries. In this case, it was led by a Canadian, but it was an average, it was 100 researchers at the end of the day who pulled with their expertise. So there's an immense value of having researchers from various countries and expertise come together to provide evidence-based research and send a strong message to a large audience as well. So that has immense value, and it starts with strong research, independent research as well. So that's an effort that we need to keep pushing. That's why it was so appealing to me to join this effort as well, to contribute to that effort. And one of the key messages that this report is sending, and I really want to make sure that I have time to say this in this conversation, is that at the end of the day, we are not powerless in front of this technology, and AI will be what we want it to be. So the message that this report sends is, here is the research. We realize it's an ongoing effort. It's important to continue that, but we also send this message that at the end of the day, it is our societies that will decide what we want to do with this technology. And the research community, as shown in this report and is shown by this effort that we are co-leading, Nicolas and myself, is we are here to help to provide the best research as possible to help societies to make the right choices as well.
I want to ask a question, because you both referenced the report, and the report, and we've talked about general purpose systems quite a bit right now, but Aishwarya has this question. Is the focus, I think implied, of the research program largely on generative AI, or is there also going to be a focus on specialized AI as well? The example given here is DNA type detection in the biotech sector. So maybe let's broaden that out to just like non-generative models or non-general purpose models.
I mean, I think the short answer is we're not going to, only consider a specific form of AI as part of the research program. But Catherine, did you want to add something?
No, I think for the beginning, we're we're kind of trying to focus on this AI report because it's providing so much good information about what we could do next. So this is our focus for right now. But again, as I mentioned, and I agree with you, Nicolas, but we want to stay focused and connected to the research community and really see what they think is important at the end of the day. So everything is on the table, but we are focused at the beginning on what this AI safety report is mentioning as a way forward.
So a thing that we've gotten a lot of questions about is AI-related environmental risks and sort of environmental impact / energy usage. Maybe this is a really quick one. Is that in the scope or something that you're thinking about?
It's something that we've discussed with the Research Council already a few times. We're not going to tackle this problem again to try and keep our resources focused in the first few calls that we're putting out, but it's definitely something that we have on our radar.
Great.
And also there are already some efforts with CIFAR to support that kind of work. So we thought that, we had something covered already, but we keep track of it, and it's still important for sure.
Of course. And yeah, Janet asks, are there Canadian researchers looking at the environmental impact of AI usage? There are. Sasha Lucioni at Hugging Face has been doing some interesting work. So that might be worth checking out. I know I'm not a panelist, but I spent so much time in this space. I figured I'd take a couple of these myself. Okay. This one sort of thematic thing we've had here is sort of whether there will be a real focus on sort of academic participants, so researchers working in academic institutions. Can you speak to maybe, we've already tackled the AI Institute question, but are you looking, is this primarily an exercise that will involve academics, or are you also looking to bring in researchers who might be working in industry or people who might be working in civil society outside of academia?
Honestly, I think it's going to be mostly an academic focus, but I don't remember having this discussion. So maybe that, I don't know, Nicolas, if you have the same feeling. I don't think if we decided on this.
No, I don't think we have discussed this yet with the Research Council, so that is a point that we will bring back to them.
Well, fantastic. So there questions having actual impacts out there in the world. So let's sort of wrap this up. Thank you all so much for your questions. Honestly, this level of engagement is really hopefully inspiring for both of you to see the number of people who kind of are interested in it. But let's close out here. We talked at the top about what the goals of this are, but I wanted to maybe get both of you to close out, each of you to close out with a few words on what you hope, if this works. You're starting something here. If this works, what is the outcome? What is the sort of world that you hope that this kind of work can create? I'll start with Nicolas and give Catherine the last word.
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. I think essentially what I would love to see is that we achieve a state where essentially the general public understands the capabilities of AI systems much better, understands to some extent how these systems operate, and what they can bring to them in terms of sort of positive and sort of the benefits to the society. And in order to achieve that, I think we need to essentially streamline the collaborations across sort of, you mentioned academia, industry, and so on. Basically creating opportunities for more feedback loops across these different stakeholders to make sure that the technology is advancing so quickly, and there's excellent work done by all these stakeholders, making sure that the information is consolidated in a coherent way to ensure that the research that we're funding has an impact beyond, scientific venues is going to be really important, and I think a key measure of success. Catherine, do you want to add something?
Yes, I really like this feedback loop approach. I fully agree with that. And going back to I think the first thing I said, I think for me, what's important is to really create this high caliber and robust research community around AI safety, and not only prepare for what we know, but what we don't know, but also work with the researcher we have, but build the next generation of researchers. So that's, for me, it's fundamental to make sure that we anticipate the future, and we are ready with our research community that is growing, is really ready to tackle this challenge. And of course, because of my background, I couldn't leave this conversation without saying that I really hope as well that this research, this strong research agenda really helps policymakers at the national level, regional level, and international level to make the best decision, to make sure that we reframe this technology in a way that we can enjoy the benefit of it. So I really hope that the two links can be made eventually, but yeah, that's my hope for the future.
Yeah, and just to add one tiny last comment is that Canada has been one of the, or I think the first country of AI strategy. And so we really want to benefit from all these investments we've made as a country in this technology. And so I think of AI safety as an enabler of this innovation. With that, I'll hand it back to Murad.
Yeah, well, thank you both so much. I mean, listen, there's obviously this is the start of something, as I keep saying, and you know, Canada's hosting the G7 this year. I can tell you that from what I hear up in Ottawa, yeah, is going to be a big part of that, and I think there's certainly sort of a Canada on the world stage moment. It's one of the fascinating, the abiding fascinations of my life, where this country plays on the international stage. So, thank you so much to Catherine and Nicolas for joining me to talk about the CAISI research program at CIFAR. I'll turn this back over to Elissa to close us out.
Thanks, Murad.
What a phenomenal conversation. Thank you so much to Murad, to Nicolas, to Kathleen, and to all of you for your amazing questions. We had 50, 60 questions coming in, so we really appreciate hearing what you're concerned about, what you're interested in, and we at the CIFAR team will take those back and take a look at those and make sure that we're able to answer some of those for you as well too. So I think what this conversation has shown us is that there really is an urgent societal need to understand more about AI safety. And history has shown us that research is really a critical cornerstone for advancing new ideas, policies, and innovations. And that's why we're so focused on the research aspect of this topic. The establishment of the CAISI research program at CIFAR represents a positive step forward in ensuring that we have engaged the world's brightest minds to pursue meaningful research that will contribute to a safer, more equitable, and responsive world for all. So let me end by encouraging you to visit our website, cifar.ca, to learn more about the CAISI research program at CIFAR. And you can stay up to date by subscribing to our newsletters. We have one focused on AI called the AI Can Bulletin, and our broader CIFAR newsletter is called CIFAR Insight. And you will also be able to access a recording of today's session on our website. Give us a couple of days to get it posted and get it subtitled with translation as well. So thank you again, everyone. Merci beaucoup pour votre attention. À la prochaine.